The things that we know music can do are things like lower anxiety and stress, lower blood pressure. People who are experiencing pain, they report less pain when music is just in the environment, right? Music triggers dopamine release, which we take all kinds of medications to do that for us, and music can do it just by being in the room. Many of you are probably aware that for Alzheimer's or dementia patients, that music can access centers in our brain involved with memory recall and can improve that function just from the presence of music in a space. Now, these are all therapeutic outcomes, right? These are things that music therapists think about as far as introducing music, and these are the biological or mental or emotional outcomes that we look for. At ACG, we're not music therapists, right? We are artists, and we really think about this work from an artistic outcome. We think about the connections we can make, and really the platform for expression. And that's the magic here, is just setting the stage for someone to say what they feel, what they believe, what they need to say. And when we have that goal centered in a musical outcome, it's easier, right? I think for us, many of us have not been taught how to express freely. Some of us have, and consider yourself very lucky, right, if that's something that happens in a really fluid way. But I would argue that probably most of us aren't just really able to let feelings flow, to identify our feelings and then put them in a space and offer them to others. So that's really where I think something truly amazing happens in this program. I think especially that's true for people going through specific challenges, but again, also true for all of us. So we mentioned a few things that happen just with music in an environment, but what we do in this program is really make music with people in all kinds of different ways, and that is where that avenue of expression happens. That is where that avenue for processing happens. And I think especially in the case of songwriting, we might be able to develop some emotional coping skills, some ways to deal with emotions that are positive. And in 2014, this really started when we partnered with Carnegie Hall for Lullaby Project. We were mainly teaching before that. We were thinking about educational outcomes before that, but healing wasn't absent from that either, right? We were working, I personally was working in a juvenile detention center for 5 years prior to that. And teaching in that setting, I became very aware of the positive impact of making music with young people, and especially young people who need an outlet so desperately. We have about a dozen local partners that we work with. That includes clinical spaces like Dell Children's Hospital, St. David's NICU, community care, integral care. These are some local kind of clinical spaces where we have different partnerships. We also work in other sort of social service organizations like Red Oak Hope, like Any Baby Can. And we do Lullaby Project there. We do all kinds of different things. For example, I think our biggest thing that we do is we partner an individual artist with an individual community member who's involved in these organizations, and the two spend time together. That could be 3 hours. That could be 8 sessions, each one being an hour and a half, and they create music together. There are no boundaries, there are no really rules to the time they spend together, other than we talk, we create a narrative, and we place that narrative into a musical space. It may not even involve words. It might be all about the words. In that way, because the format is so flexible and because we have so many partners, for me personally, this has been a way to connect to my community in ways I couldn't have imagined. We have 7 professional artists on our staff. I was talking to, I think, Anne earlier, or Heather or Anne said, you just have great people, right? You just have great people doing this work. That is absolutely true. Because this work is so sensitive, because we have to build that connection or we didn't do our job, it's people like Arnold that are core to that mission, and can do that in healthy, responsible, joyful ways. These people excel in all kinds of art forms, whether it's, jazz, pop, and R&B, rock music, blues, classical music, opera. They do it all. So they're really inspiring in lots of different ways. In addition to those individual collaborations between artists and participant, we also have some classes, just general sort of group community spaces where people can come together and make music. Most of the time when we work with a new organization, we ask them what they need first. And we take that information, collaborate, and build something that's going to be best for that space. So in the case of foundation communities, we wanted people to come out of their rooms, to come into a central space and just be with each other. When we sit down with a person, it's often about building trust, right? I don't know about you, but I wouldn't spill my guts with just an absolute stranger. And so it takes a little bit of time to have that conversation and talk about the things. Questions sort of graduate in intensity to questions that are really, really powerful and at the center of our being, like what scares us and what makes us feel calm, anger and hope, and these sort of bigger questions, right? When we sit down, we have some conversations and then invite people to think about these questions. And from that springboard point is where we would start making music and say, does this fit your idea? Does this sound contribute to those words? And we would definitely have a lot of no's. That's not it. Oh, I don't like that. I'd really prefer this or that. Or maybe there's a song that I love that sounds like what this is trying to say. And let's try and make it sound like that. It's this constant collaboration, right? And back and forth. And that's how we do this work.